Okay. Last speaker series. So this is speaker series number 5. So it's the last time you have to listen to me talk. So we're going to talk about sleep, a little bit on emotional health. So this one's always a hard one for me just because I am not an expert on emotional mental health. And so I don't like talking about stuff that I'm really not equipped to talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit more on happiness and emotional health versus mental health and illness and all that kind of stuff afterwards. So we're going to talk about sleep today though, and I do know quite a bit about sleep, and I've learned quite a bit about sleep with Dr. Attia. So this one, and me included, it is the most undervalued pillar of health in the industrialized nations. I put that there because if you watch some of the blue zones that everybody's talking about how these people are living, for a long time, a lot of some of the stuff I'm kind of like, I'm not sure I buy. But the two things that I take away from that is they move all the time. So they exercise all the time, but not necessarily on purpose. They just move like we used to move, right? So I think that is a big part of it. And they sleep. They go to bed when the sun goes down and they get up when the sun comes up. And they talk about that's how, again, we used to sleep, right? We sleep when it's dark and we're awake when it's light, and they're not, living in the industrialized world. And so our industrialized world has destroyed our sleep, and to the point where we undervalue it, and me included. Like I always used to think, I'm tired, but it's not like hurting me. I'm just tired and I got to get more sleep. It really is hurting us in terms of our health and wellness. So we talked about exercise to nauseam, I know, zone 2, and we talked about nutrition, and we talked about stability and how important it is, and it is very important. But sleep as well, it causes the same problems as does lack of exercise, as does eating poorly, all that kind of stuff. So it is adequate or an efficient sleep that is not taken seriously, that yet has such impact on health and well-being as much as, like I just said, exercise and nutrition. So most people, if you ask them, would know, you're supposed to exercise, you're supposed to eat healthy in order to be healthy. Most of people don't choose to do that, but they at least would know that that's what they're supposed to be doing. Yet I don't think most people know that sleep is that important to our health. The joke is, and I used to say it all the time, and I've heard people say it a lot, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And sadly, that is kind of true. You will die sooner than someone who sleeps well. So the statistics are there, the studies are there that are showing people end up dying sooner. That's why people that do shift work tend to have a lower life expectancy if they do shift work their whole life, because they're just not sleeping properly. They just sit. I used to do it. You just can't sleep well. Our circadian rhythm doesn't work like that. And so people that do shift work, especially night shift and things like that, have a very hard time in terms of sleep. And so then they can, exercise and they can eat healthy, and yet they're getting such poor quality sleep, even if they're trying to get quantity. I used to try to get, you try to get your 8 hours in choppy throughout the day, trying to get your sleep when you had to work nights. And now that I see I wear a Whoop now, and I see what my sleep looks like, obviously I wasn't sleeping well at all then. So most studies indicate that 7.5 to 8.5 hours is proper sleep, and anything less than 7 hours is inefficient. Yet, me included, I would say I can get by on 5 to 6. So on my 5 a.m. days, I'm getting by with 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Sometimes I get more. But people will say, I get by, I'm fine. I only need 4 hours of sleep. I work better with 5 hours of sleep, and that I don't need that and too much sleep is too bad for me. And really what's happened there is the same as what I talk about when people eat poorly. You don't know how you feel till you start to eat differently, and then you start to realize, oh my gosh, like you don't eat gluten for a while, and then you eat a piece of bread and you're like, oh my God, that feels terrible. Or you don't eat sugar, and pretty soon you realize your blood sugars aren't flying all over the place. So you don't know how bad you feel when you eat poorly until you start to eat healthy, and then you start to feel better, and then you put some bad food in your body and realize how bad that makes you feel. Sleep is the same thing. We adapt. Our body is very good at adapting to our environment and what's around us so that we can survive and live our days. But if you went the other way and you started to really focus on your sleep and getting some sleep, you would probably realize how inefficient you were living your life during the day, the next day, and we're going to talk about how sleep impacts your performance the next day, not just in terms of your health, but how you perform in your day. and how many hours we lose in terms of people that can't perform in the workplace properly. So people that think that they're doing well are doing well only because their body has decided to like make them believe that, okay? So poor sleep dramatically increases one's propensity for metabolic dysfunction. So I talked about that during nutrition, and I talked about it with exercise. So remember what metabolic disorders or dysfunction is when you have like one of the key factors like high blood pressure, high triglycerides, you have the adipose fats, you have the visceral fat in your belly, you have your risk of diabetes, your risk of heart disease, high triglycerides, all of those things that are metabolic dysfunction. So when we talked about how eating poorly increases your risk of metabolic dysfunction, how not exercises increases your risk for metabolic dysfunction, so does sleep. So sleep doesn't just make us tired, or lack of sleep doesn't just make us tired, it actually affects how our body's working inside. And so it's doing the same thing to us as it is when we're not eating properly and when we're not exercising. So it decreases our life expectancy and or our longevity, wreaks havoc on our hormonal imbalance. That's a big one. I did not realize that till I started really researching it. So guys tend to have low testosterone when they don't sleep very well, and that's been proven in study after study after study. Guys that work in shift work and work, so Joe used to do that, all that kind of stuff, and have very little sleep sometimes, and so it wreaks havoc on our hormonal imbalance, especially testosterone for guys, estrogen for females. Increases our susceptibility of getting sick, so it decreases our immune system. So we all know people that have that problem, right? They're chronically got the cold, they get sick easily, they get the flu. Usually, when our kids go back to school, they're getting sick. There's twofold there, because they're probably getting less sleep. Parents are getting less sleep, everything's tightening up again, and that's when people start to get sick, their immune system drops. So people that tend to get sick a lot probably really need to look at, like, why is that? Our immune system is supposed to work for us. So yes, we're supposed to get sick sometimes. That was a big thing with COVID, and my thought process there was, we're not supposed to live in a bubble. And so when we did, and we came out of the bubble, I saw it in here all the time. First year, people were really sick all the time because they hid from bugs. You can't hide from bugs. So our body needs to work in terms of our immune system, and we need to be exposed. So when we are sleep deprived, our body cannot fight those bugs like they can when we have proper sleep. So we become more compromised when we're sleeping less. So then that person usually is the person that's always sick. So that was a big one that I didn't quite understand. So affects brain health. So I'm going to talk about this. So usually something that makes people perk up is the chance that they possibly are going to get Alzheimer's somewhere down the line. Yeah, no, that I think is the biggest fear for all of us, right? And so I've talked about that with exercise and how much exercise helps diminish our risk of Alzheimer's disease. Sleep is a big one in terms of our brain health and our chances of getting Alzheimer's and dementia. It's also unsafe, right? So I talked about that just previously. So when we're tired, our reaction time decreases. So then driving, we've all driven where we're super tired, and you realize sometimes that I maybe shouldn't have been driving. So it's been proven time and time again as well that you're at more risk for getting in accidents, you're at more risk for running red lights, not paying attention, decision-making drops when we're in that fatigued position. Productivity decreases. So this, again, numerous studies have proven, and that's the whole thing of people don't realize how unproductive they are until they start getting actual sleep and good sleep. So businesses suffer in terms of their productivity when people are sleep deprived. They just purely don't work as well when they're tired as when they are well slept, or when they are well rested. Education, so then our kids simply are just too tired to perform well in school, staying up late, doing homework on their phones prior to falling asleep, late practices, overscheduled. It's worse now for kids, right? We have them so overscheduled. Poor sleep habits, they're on their phones before they go to bed. We're going to talk about that stuff in terms of using phones before they go to bed. So then education, we are seeing, test scores are dropping and all of that kind of stuff. Our kids are just getting more and more tired because we're putting social media in their way, we're putting phones in their way, we're putting laptops in their way, and we're like practicing homework, staying up late, And so our poor kids are suffering the consequences of that. Okay, back to brain health. So I said that I was going to talk about that. So sleep is critical to cognitive function. So our memory and our emotional equilibrium, which increases our stress, anxiety, depression. So if we're not in sync, then we tend to find ourselves the next day more stressed. I've noticed that now that I wear this Whoop and I track my sleep, it's just really kind of crazy when it's not like you tell it what you're doing. It just knows based on your biometrics. And so your stress is increased dramatically. So my stress, which I feel like I'm not under stress during the day, my stress is dramatically different on days when I don't sleep properly than on days when I do. So I'm seeing the full effects of it just by paying attention to it now. So here I think of how our young kids acted when they were overtired. So if you had kids, or if you didn't have kids, but if you had kids, young kids, or you have young kids right now, do you remember when they got overtired or you couldn't get them to take their nap and they were just like unglued and you were just like, oh my God, they just have to go to bed, or one of us has to go to bed. And that's what it is. Like they can't cope properly. And so that's kids, and think they're no different than us, right? So we just don't cope very well in our day when we don't get the sleep that we need. So when we go to sleep, our brain goes to work in cleaning itself. So it's very similar to the mitochondrial function of our body. So the cellular cells in our body that are our energy producers. And so when we exercise, and especially zone 2, that's what we've been focusing on with what zone 2 does, is it cleans and revitalizes our mitochondria, which is our cellular energy in our body. So when we sleep, it's a little bit different. So zone 2 helps our brain clean itself as well, but so does sleep. So when we sleep, that's when our brain goes to work and starts to clean that out. And that's what puts us at risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, because when that gunk doesn't get cleaned out from getting proper sleep, and that happens when we're in deep sleep. So if that doesn't happen on a regular basis, then the gunk builds up from our choices every day environmentally, right? So all the stuff that we do in our day clogs up our system, and then we have to do the work, or our cells have to do the work of trying to clean that out. Zone 2 helps that significantly. For the brain, sleeping helps that significantly. So when we don't get proper sleep, including quality and quantity, so just because you get 8 hours, and again, paying attention to my Whoop, not saying you have to buy a Whoop, it's just making me more aware. Just because I think I slept well doesn't mean I slept well, and it's kind of crazy. So I might get quantity of sleep, but I'm really not getting quality of sleep sometimes. And when that happens, your brain is not able to clean itself. So if I'm not going into deep sleep properly, or I'm not going into REM sleep, then the vacuum cleaner is not going into my brain. And so then over time, so one night of that's not a big deal, but over time, if you're chronically sleep deprived, that builds up, and that's what leads to Alzheimer's. So it's that buildup in our brain, in the brain matter. So that leads us to dementia and Alzheimer's. So if anything, most people, all the stuff I'm talking about tonight, that usually stands out for people as like, oh my God, if I don't sleep, I'm more at risk of that. Chronic poor sleep is a powerful potential cause of Alzheimer's. So not only are we more at risk, it's actually causing it. And they're doing studies right now with people. So we know that they're not doing studies. So we know people with dementia and Alzheimer's, they have sleep problems. They don't sleep well. But it is now being studied that people who are suffering from poor sleep in the initial stages, they think those people are in the initial stages of dementia. So it's like a precursor. So sort of middle-aged, older people that are having all of a sudden a problem with sleeping, is that actually the sign that dementia is is in the first stages of dementia. So they're doing studies, and they're sort of trying to figure out, is it the chicken and the egg? So is it the poor sleep that's causing dementia, or are we having poor sleep because we're probably already on our way to having dementia or Alzheimer's? So a big reason to sort of start working on our sleep. Studies have shown that even a single night of bad sleep has harmful effects on our physical and cognitive performances. So they do studies with athletes, so professional athletes underperform when they have poor sleep. So their endurance drops, their VO2 drops, their strength drops, and they're more likely to be injured. These are young professional athletes that they're testing these things on. and that's happening to them. So can you imagine then what that's happening to us? And so if it happens to them, why would you think it's not happening to us? So if you listen to professional athletes, so sometimes I'll watch, how these guys live their lives. So Roger Federer, Matt Fraser, LeBron James have all come out and talked about how important these guys get, like upwards of 8 to 10 hours of sleep every single night before, so that they can do what they do, and how important their sleep is to their training. So if you look at that again, if they need that, why would we not need that, right? They're trying to do something that's like incredibly hard, and they're saying that they have to have that sleep in order to do it properly. Doctors have also talked about seeing old man blood in young patients' blood work. And what that means is they're seeing what they see in a 70-year-old, they're seeing it in a 30-year-old and a 40-year-old when they're having chronic sleep problems. So just like we talked about before, hormone imbalances, especially guys with testosterone, increased inflammatory markers, increased insulin, which is that insulin resistance. We've talked about that a lot, so hopefully you guys know what that means. But that means that with insulin, when our insulin is increased, it means we've got blood or glucose, which I'm going to talk about, swimming around in our blood, meaning we are not using our glucose properly. And lack of sleep causes our body to not be able to use glucose properly. So then we become insulin resistant. So increased triglycerides, I spelled that wrong, decreased testosterone, which we already talked about. Numerous studies have found that chronic sleep deprivation causes increased insulin resistance, which leads to that metabolic dysfunction. So you're getting the same results as not exercising and not eating properly when you don't sleep properly. So your insulin resistance goes up, which leads to all kinds of problems. Increase in blood pressure, 17% increase when you're sleep deprived. Cardiovascular disease, 16%. Coronary heart disease, 26%. Obesity, 38% when you're sleep deprived is your increased risk. So why does poor sleep cause problems? And again, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg, or it's both sort of it's a feedback loop. So increased stress causes poor sleep. So you're stressed in your day, you're stressed in your job, you're stressed with your kids, whatever that is. So increased stress causes poor sleep. Poor sleep causes increased stress. So if I get poor sleep and I feel like my day's going great and my life is going great, but I don't sleep very well, I'm much more stressed the next day just based on what my biometrics are. So both of them then, it's a feedback loop. One causes the other, which causes the other, and so on and so on. And then you're just sort of on this hamster wheel where both of them are interfering with each other. And then both, stress and poor sleep, both activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight mechanism. So the fight or flight is what protects us, right? So we need a fight or flight mechanism. Problem is, in our society, in our world, we are people that are chronically stressed, are constantly in a fight or flight position. So then instead of that helping us flee the situation and then we come back down to normal, or fight whatever we're in and then we come back down to normal, if we're chronically raised and we're chronically in that fight or flight, then that causes increased cortisol. So if you've heard me talk to people about cortisol or talked about cortisol again is if I'm in a position where I have to run away from a bear, I have an increased cortisol level comes into my body, which allows me to run away, and I have that fight or flight mechanism. But people that are chronically in that position, their cortisol levels rise and stay risen, and then that's where the problem comes in. Then it starts to affect your body, right? So then that chronically high cortisol level leads to numerous health problems in the body, particularly elevated glucose. So that's where I just talked about how our body can't move glucose properly. So people that have high cortisol levels, from not sleeping properly and or stressed on a constant basis, tend to gain weight, because when you have high cortisol, you can't lose weight. It's really tricky to try to lose weight because your body can't utilize glucose properly. So then blood glucose levels are chronically high, which causes insulin resistance, which we've already talked about, which leads to type 2 diabetes and heart disease and all the metabolic disorders that we talked about. So it's a sort of a chicken and the egg, or which causes which. Really, they both just sort of feed off of each other. You're stressed, you don't sleep, you sleep, poor sleep, and then you become stressed, and they just feed off of each other. So it also causes, so not only does it cause that blood glucose level to rise and stay risen, and your body not able to uptake glucose properly, it causes an increase in your resting heart rate, so RHR, resting heart rate, and a decrease in your heart rate variability. So again, with my Whoop, that's driving me crazy, because it's like the things that I think I should be doing, and my heart rate, my HRV, my heart rate variability goes down, my resting heart rate goes up as soon as my sleep becomes a problem, or my stress levels become a problem, or I'm not sleeping, all on and on and on. And so I see it. I don't tell my Whoop what I'm doing. It just sees it based on what my biometrics are. And then when that happens, when I see my HRV go down, my resting heart rate go up instead when I'm sleeping, then I have poor recovery. And I see it also measures what your stress levels are, and I can see my night where it's, instead of like a nice calm whine when I'm supposed to be sleeping, it's like this. And so I can just see, even though I didn't feel it, I can see that my body's not resting properly. People who are sleep deprived, so we talked about obesity back here, right? So it causes obesity. Part of the reason that happens is it decreases the sleep, or so suppresses two different hormones. So it suppresses our leptin and it increases our ghrelin. So those are our two sort of hunger and satiating hormones. So when we are sleep deprived, so the thing that makes us feel full or satiated is our leptin. So decreased sleep decreases our leptin. So then we don't tend to feel full. So then we feel like we need to eat more. And then decreased sleep increases our ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. So then we will feel more hungry than we should feel. So people who tend to be sleep deprived tend to eat, on average, 300 calories a day. And it's typically high cal, high sugar foods, because what are they looking for? Increased energy. So their body, even though they might not be searching it out, their body's searching it out. It's trying to survive the day. Those people tend to eat those higher sugary cal foods. 300 calories extra a day, think about what that adds up to in a year, unfortunately. So that's another reason why we tend to gain weight, and people who are chronically sleep deprived really just have a hard time losing that weight. I think we all know, but I just sort of mentioned what our sleep levels are. So light sleep is when our body starts to go to sleep. Attia talks about it, was kind of neat. He talks about it as like a submarine that's going down. So you are on the surface, light sleep, and then as it starts to dive, you go into deep sleep. You have to hit all of these, right? And so people that are sleep deprived, even though they think they're like, I slept for 8 hours, and they don't hit deep, or they don't hit REM, or they go down to deep, and then they come up to light and they miss deep, or they stay in deep, or they don't get enough light. All of it is supposed to happen in about 90-minute cycles as we go through our night. So we need to hit light in order to get to deep. And once we hit deep, that's where all the brain cleaning happens that I talked about, right? So this is the deep sleep is important for the brain health. That's where our brain cleans itself and decides which memories to store. So it goes through our short-term memories, decides we don't need those, we're gonna keep these, and we're gonna put these over here. So that's the brain's health space. And so then if we don't hit that, that's when the vacuum cleaner doesn't do our work. Then we go into deeper, or we come out into a REM sleep, which is important for that's our emotional health, memories, sorting out problems of the day, storing information. So if we don't hit good REM sleep, then like our kids don't have information that they need to remember things in school. Emotional health, that's where our emotional health is. So then we talked about that with it being partly for our cleaning our brain, but also how do we emotionally handle our days. So people that are chronically sleep deprived with less REM sleep have a harder time emotionally making it through their days. So all those parts need to be hit. And then, so assessing and getting better sleep. So then we've talked about, yes, there's lots of bad things that can happen. Am I actually somebody that's getting bad sleep or not? I mean, you don't all have to go wear a Whoop, but I honestly thought I got way better sleep than I get. And so it's just made me kind of aware. It's kind of like when we talked about the glucose monitor. I'm not, again, saying that everybody should go and wear a glucose monitor, but sometimes it's good to know, like, how good a sleep am I actually getting? And so finding something, it doesn't have to be a Whoop. The Apple does it, Apple Watch does it as well. It maybe doesn't do quite as good a job as Whoop, but it would at least give you an idea of what your sleep looks like. So you first have to decide, am I getting good sleep? Maybe you are, and then it's not a problem for you, but unfortunately it's a $28 billion a year problem in the US, so most Americans probably aren't getting enough sleep. So In the US, we spend $28 billion a year on sleep medications. So sleep supplement, not supplements, but actual medications. But it's been actually decreasing of late because most of them don't work and people are realizing that, and many of them are addictive. So we have all these sleep medications out there that people are trying to use, and it's really the pharmaceutical companies have not come up with a really great sleep aid that is not addictive and puts you into good sleep. So the problem with the sleeping pills that we use out there, like Ambien and things like that, don't put us through our sleep levels. So they might put you to sleep, but they don't put you through either deep sleep or REM sleep. They just drop you into something and then bring you back out without hitting all the levels. And then it becomes, yes, you're getting quantity of sleep, but are you actually getting quality? And that's where people aren't actually getting as good a sleep as they think they are. And so then they're starting to see that people are not taking the sleep medication because it's just really not helping. The one supplement that does work well, and I actually started taking it, and it actually, I think it works. Maybe it's, who knows, it could be just the thought of it working. But the one supplement that's on the market that is not an actual medication, it's not that's not a chemical that you're putting into your body, is ashwagandha. So I don't know if anybody's heard of ashwagandha. So it's just a plant extract, and it's actually, I thought of it, and it's for people, it helps people with stress and anxiety. So people take it, helps reduce their stress levels, helps reduce their anxiety levels. But even if you think about it like that, like if it's reducing your stress, reducing your anxiety, it's probably helping you sleep as well, right? And it does. So if you look up ashwagandha and what it does for us, they are showing that it actually does help people get much better sleep. And since I started taking it, I think I'm getting better sleep. We'll see. But I do think it's helping for sure. So it's something that if you feel like you want to try something to help you sleep a little bit better, it's cheap. It's a plant extract. It's purely just ashwagandha. There's nothing in it that hurts you. So it would be something to try if you feel like you need to try something to help you sleep that's really not going to be harmful to you at all. Also balances hormones, improves athletic performance, and then also, like we just talked about, sleep. So do I sleep properly or not? So if you want to improve your sleep, then there's a whole bunch of steps that he talks about in the literature all talks about. But before you decide, what am I going to do and do I need that, you have to decide, do I actually need more sleep? So first step is, it's kind of like AA. You have to decide, do I need more sleep? Is this something that I actually need? Because if you don't admit that to yourself, or you don't believe it, then you're not going to follow them anyways, right? So if you don't believe it to be true, or you feel like, I have great sleep, I don't need to worry about it, then it doesn't matter really what I say, because you're going to not follow it anyways, because you'll feel like you're fine. But if you do feel like you need it, or you need some better sleep quality, then there's a whole bunch of things we're going to talk about. They do talk about, there's sleep questionnaires to use. I didn't list them all here, and I'm not going to recommend sleep questionnaires in here. But if you want them, like, he talks about some really good questionnaires. So if you're like, kind of like, I don't know, I just want to see. So then you could do these questionnaires, which would give you a kind of an idea. They talk about, how do you go to sleep? How do you feel like you sleep? Do you wake up? How does your day go? All these types of things, so that you can at least sort of identify, am I getting good sleep, or did I think I was getting good sleep, but according to this, it's not saying I'm getting good sleep. So it just might make you a little bit more aware, okay? If you do think you have, the one thing I'm just going to talk about sleep, I'm not going to talk about sleep apnea, because that's like a medical condition that you actually really need some help for. But if somebody's told you that you don't breathe at night, or you stop breathing at night, or you're a big snorer, then you might want to get assessed for sleep apnea, because then that leads to like lots of other health consequences that you don't want. So we're not going to go into that, but if you feel like that's something you need to test, you should. Okay, so how to improve your sleep. So sadly, the number one is don't drink alcohol. So there it is for everybody, me included. Don't drink alcohol. And if you must, try and drink before 6 p.m. and limit to 1 drink. Alcohol probably impairs our sleep quality more than any other factor we can control. So don't confuse the drowsiness that it produces with quality sleep. The problem with alcohol is it puts you to sleep. It doesn't keep you asleep. So halfway through or a quarter of the way through the night, you've slept, then all of a sudden you're waking up and you're not going into those deep stages of sleep. Again, sadly, my Whoop has shown me that pretty well. Abby too. Abby is like, she must have like Is it okay if I talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just
I don't know if she's allergic to alcohol, but I mean, if she drinks even one glass of alcohol now, which we used to drink wine pretty regularly at our house, but she will go like 60 days without drinking any alcohol, not tell her Whoop what she's doing, because you can also tell it what you're doing, and then that's always where I'm like, is it telling me, or is it just, no, I drank and now it's telling me this? So you don't tell it, but then she wakes up with, like, so you have green, which is like a really good recovery, your body's done exactly what it's supposed to do. Yellow, still a good recovery, but maybe you got to work on a couple things to get better for the next day. And then red is, yikes, something bad is happening, you didn't sleep well at all. She can have like one drink now, and after 60 days, she has one drink and she's in the red. And she could be green, yellow, and all that, and then
really
red.
Bad.
Like really bad.
12% recovery. My HRV is usually above 100. It's good at about 115, 120. It'll go to the 40s.
Like significantly terrible.
My resting heart rate will be in the upper 60s.
And that's just like with
70s.
one. Like it's crazy. So I don't think, I'm not like that. And so she must have like some kind of pretty serious sensitivity to alcohol. But you what?
I still like it.
Yeah, I know, poor Abby. And I'm not saying don't drink. I'm just saying, I used to be that person that be like, wine helps me go to sleep at night. So I liked drinking wine, but I always did know that like by 2 o'clock, I was like up and down and up and down and all over the place. So I've tried my best to not drink very much alcohol, and it has helped for sure. So if you can, try not to drink. And if you can help it even more, try not to drink after 6 p.m. so that your body has time to utilize that and not have it affect your sleep. Second is don't eat less than 3 hours before bedtime. Well, that never happens because I'm going to go home and eat dinner, sadly. So, but I think that's pretty straightforward. Like the more you eat, the harder it is. Your food isn't digesting, and then it's trying to digest while you're eating. So if you are somebody that's really having a hard time, I don't think food bothers me, but probably it does. So don't try to eat less than 3 hours before. And it is honestly, and I've read this numerous times, it is best to go to sleep a little bit hungry, not starving, obviously, but you shouldn't go to bed with like a full stomach. So this is the big one, and this is something like with our kids and our adults. No stimulating electronics 2 hours prior to bedtime, and that's probably what interferes, like alcohol, probably one of the biggest things to interfere with our sleep. Is the screens that we use. So the phones, the laptops, the video games, we've all heard about blue light, right? It's not even, it's the blue light for sure, but it is also what it does. So if you're playing video games before you go to sleep, it's stimulating your brain. How do you think you're going to actually go to sleep with that? So they bombard us with blue light, but it also activates our minds, and it makes it hard for your brain to shut down and be able to go to sleep. If you do have to use a screen or you're on your phone or something, at least get the blue light reverse or reduce so you can change the settings on your phone. You can wear the blue light glasses, though I was reading about the blue light glasses, and they don't do as good a job as you think they're going to do. It really should be just like, don't use your phones. It's better to honestly use your TV to watch TV. It doesn't have as much blue light as what our phones and our iPads and our laptops and our video games have. So trying to avoid that because of the stimulation and the blue light. So when you think of our kids going to sleep and they're on our phones using social media, right? He talks about that. Social media is a killer in terms of sleeping. So for at least 1 hour before bed, avoid doing anything that is anxiety producing or stimulating, such as reading work emails. I am terrible at that. And God help you, checking social media. I don't do that, thankfully. But that is a big thing with our kids, right? Social media is a sleep killer for people. And so then you just think of our young kids that are just on their phones using all that social media, and probably right before they go to sleep. And then you think, God, why are they so tired in the morning when they get up? Why can't I get them out of bed? They're probably up till whatever time on social media. So sad. So those are the big ones, right? So we talked about don't drink alcohol, try not to eat right before bed, and then try to limit the phones and the laptops and the video games. He talks about watching TV is better. A, not as much blue light, and B, like, don't watch, Lone Survivor probably before you go to bed. That kind of is a bit disturbing. So watch something that is going to calm you and just let you relax and go to sleep. So obviously reading a book is the best, But if you want to watch TV, it's better than being on your phone and scrolling through social media and reading emails and online shopping and all that kind of stuff. That just stimulates your brain. So you're trying to look for things that settle you down and get you ready to go to sleep. So we talked about that. So then, if you do happen to have hot tub, sauna, those are fantastic, of course, but most of us don't have that. But you can hit a hot shower, hot bath. That also works the same. It sort of raises our body temperature, but then you go to bed, so it signals the brain that this is what's happening. So I'm having my hot sauna, my tub, whatever I'm doing. You go to the cool bed. When your body feels that, it helps your brain signal it's now time for bed. So that's a good way to do it. And then if you have, I have the Ooler. So if you have one of those cooling systems on your bed, those things work fantastic. Because again, it cools the bed, or you can put it on like you're supposed to warm it in the beginning and then let it cool down, because that's how your body falls into sleep. So things like that. So making sure your room is cool, bed is cool, you've got it on a setting that allows and promotes sleep. All of these things, right, are things that like they're sleep routines, right, to get your body ready to go to sleep. Keep your room completely dark. So I have started to do this, and this honestly seriously works. So my room, I used to have an alarm clock right here, and it had a lot of blue light. And so now, since I've read the books and stuff like that, I took the alarm clocks away, and there's like no light in my room. The light, so light is enemy for sleep, right? So when your body sees light, it thinks it's supposed to wake up. So you should not be able to see your hand in front of your face. Digital clocks are especially deadly for two reasons. A, there's that light that you see. B, if you're trying to get to sleep and all you keep doing is going, oh my God, it's 10:30. Oh no, it's 11. Oh my God, it's 11:30. And you just start, and I am terrible for that, going, oh my God, now I'm only going to have 5 hours of sleep. Now I'm only going to have 4.5 hours of sleep. And you just start to stress about it. So they do two things. So I got rid of my alarm clock. It's been really hard, because then it's like, you don't know what time it is, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be asleep. You're not supposed to know what time it is. So that's been hard for me to do. I do have my phone beside my bed because I have to have an alarm clock, obviously, to get up, but it's dark, right? And so if I have to, I can touch it and then I can see what time it is, but I don't. I just flip it over, set my alarm, doesn't create light, and I've tried to get rid of all light in my room. I have to say that's probably pretty darn good. It's helped a lot. Even those little, that they talk about, like, so your cable box, your TV has a little red light when you turn it off. Those things are disturbing. I've read about studies where a little red light, if they put it like in the bed and touch your leg or something like with that, your brain will recognize that there's a light there and it will start to wake up. So cover the little lights so that you can't even though they don't really put a lot of light in, your brain recognizes it as light and it'll disrupt your sleep. So cover those up so you can't see those on your TV. Get rid of your alarm clocks or whatever that's creating light, unless it doesn't have a light on it. But then, like I said, if you're just sitting there watching the alarm clock and what time it is and how much you're not sleeping, that just causes stress. Give yourself, this is probably the toughest for me, give yourself enough time to sleep. So usually it's like, okay, if I get to bed right now, I'll have 7. But really, I should get to bed at 8 hours or 9 hours so that I can read my book, rest, recover, start to get into a sleep pattern so that my body's recognizing we are ready to go to sleep, versus running in there and like laying down and going, go to sleep now. Doesn't work. So try to give yourself enough time to sleep. And then fix your wake up time. Again, I'm terrible at this because I wake up all over the place at different times. But if you can have a fixed wake up time, all this again is talking about sleep routine. The one thing I keep thinking about was when our kids slept, they were great sleepers because we made them great sleepers. They read their story, they had a bath, they had, their snack or their milk or whatever. They had a set routine every single night so that they were in bed by 8 o'clock or whatever that was. And they went to sleep and they didn't get up till whatever time they were supposed to get up. But it was a sleep routine. And then we become adults or we become busy kids and teenagers and we destroy the sleep routine and then we wonder why we can't sleep. But our bodies, it's our circadian rhythm. It recognizes what we're trying to do, and then it prepares ourselves for sleep, and we get rid of all of that. But if you were that person that really had a good sleep routine for your kids, think about that, how well your kids slept. And if they didn't have the routine and you went away for the weekend, how bad it all went and they never slept. Because it's just, you didn't give them their routine. And then the last one is exercise. So exercise during the day does so many different things, right? It just helps us burn energy in our day. But exercise is, again, one of those sleep routine things where your brain recognizes, check mark, we did that, that's going to happen, then later on this is going to happen. So it sets our day up in terms of having a good day when we exercise. Okay, I'm going to talk nice and quick about this because this is the one where I'm just not comfortable talking. So emotional health, I'm just going to talk about the happiness part of all of this. So he talks about it. If you've read his book, it's pretty interesting. So he does all this, talks about all the stuff that I just talked about. And then in his last chapter, he talks about his own emotional health and how he's had to help himself. And it's pretty incredible, honestly. So he's had to put himself in treatment twice for probably some abuse that happened to him when he was younger. He doesn't talk about that. But he wasn't a substance abuser. He wasn't an alcoholic or anything like that. What he was he could not manage his anger. So he had all this anger, and he was like a high performer, high achiever, and really frustrated in his life. So anyways, what he talks about was he was not a happy person. He lived really high stress life, and so ended up, he said, I was either going to lose my marriage or I had to go do this. So it's a very interesting chapter. And so it's not about he doesn't have a mental health disease. He just was emotionally crippled. And so he said, that one of his therapists said, because he's a longevity doctor, she said to him, why would you want to live longer if you're so unhappy? And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is just so interesting. So that's what I just want to talk about just a little bit, and then we're done, is make sure all of this really, so I said, sleep is really important, and it is, and nutrition and exercise, but is any of it worth it if you're not happy in life? So if you are somebody, and I'm not saying anybody in here is, or if you know somebody, just make sure all of the stuff we do, all of the stuff that we're trying to do in our life and get to retirement and all of that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, are you a happy person? Are you living a happy life? Because if you're not, then is it really worth? Does it matter if you live to 90? If you're going to be a grumpy old man living by yourself, then it doesn't matter. So just make sure you're happy. So he said that was sort of his aha moment, oh, okay. So I'm trying to do all this stuff to live longer, and yet I'm going to be an old man by myself because my wife's going to leave me. So he made changes. So it just, and then he talks about, emotional health, how it can affect our health, our physical health as well. The one thing I will talk about, it does talk about the last 2 decades, especially since COVID, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, suicide, all of those things are on the increase significantly. And it's probably a lot to do with the social isolation that COVID brought to us and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to make sure, pay attention to your emotional and mental health. If you think you have a problem, get help for it. Spend time with family and friends. Do things that make you happy. Get outside in the sunshine. Sunshine helps for sure. Pay attention to loved ones who live alone. One of the leading causes of depression in older people is social isolation. So they tend to live alone, and then they become depressed, and then that's when the problems start to seep in. If they live alone, they may not be able to get out of the house to socialize with others due to injury, disease, lack of mobility, muscle strength, all the stuff that we talked about. And if you think you need help, get help. All right, lastly, I'm just going to talk about post-challenge. So we are on day 71. Saturday is day 75, then we have day 76. I've tried really hard in this challenge to make sure people understand the stuff we're doing should be done all the time. So on day 76, not a lot should change. If you want to have a glass of wine or chips or whatever it is that you gave up, that's fine. But it shouldn't be like chips every day for the rest of my life or wine every day for the rest of my life. So what happens now, or what should I change? All of it. Nothing should change. Nothing should really change. Just maybe be adjusted a bit so that if you completely got rid of something, I've always said it's always about moderation, right? Unless it's something that's really, really bad for you and you shouldn't have it at all. But if you like wine, I'm not saying don't ever drink wine again, just do it in moderation. Or if you like chips, do it in moderation. Or if you don't have to exercise, twice a day, every single day, but you do have to exercise. You have to move every day. So you still need to exercise every day. You still need to build muscle and strength every single day. That is not going away. We are not getting younger. We're going the opposite direction. Every single one of us is getting older, So then we have to focus on our muscle and our strength. You still need to work on your endurance and your capacity, your VO2. You still need to do zone 2 at least 3 times a week, 4 to 5 hours a week. If anything, so that is the biggest improvement I've seen for people, like hands down in this challenge, is the zone 2. The people that are doing zone 2, we'll see on the Embody this next time. In the second Embody we did, I've not seen results like that ever in any challenge that I've done. So I'm assuming it's probably zone 2. We've done plenty of nutrition challenges. So the zone 2 has helped people on the Embody in terms of muscle mass and fat mass, and it has helped people in the gym in terms of their ability to ride that bike, their ability to do those cardio workouts. And they say it all the time. Like today was a perfect example. Like I didn't die as much as I usually die on the bike. So it's helping. So I hope, and I think hopefully the people that have done it are seeing it. And so if you've seen it, I hope that on day 76, you're not like, whew, done with that. We're not doing that anymore. You do need to do it 3 times a week or more for 4 to 5 hours total in a week. So when I said 3 times a week for 30 minutes, that's the minimum. You need to try to work yourself up so you're at least at an hour or whatever when you get on that bike or whatever you decide to do. You still need to eat healthy food and avoid processed foods. That does not change after the challenge. You still need to eat enough protein to support muscle mass. Get on the Embody every few months. I don't have to run a challenge for you to get on the Embody. It's right there. You just have to ask me and I'll put you on. You will not know by getting on a scale where you're at. So when you're their age, probably you're fine. You probably don't have to get on the Embody all the time because they're not losing muscle mass like we are. When you're our age, you have to get on the Embody. There's no way you're going to know. And so I don't care what I weigh. I care what my muscle mass is. So that's why I get on the Embody. So it's here for you to use. You don't have to be in a challenge to use it. You still need to drink a gallon of water every day. You still need to work on stability every single day. Focus on your sleep quality like we talked about. And if you need to, work on improving it. Work on being happy. It's not just a given. Do things that make you happy. Spend time with your family and friends this holiday season. And lastly, I absolutely love that saying. You don't decide your future. You decide your habits, and your habits decide your future. I think that speaks 100% truth. So hopefully by the end of this challenge, you guys have learned what habits are going to work for you, what are not going to work for you. And day 76 is just going to be the first day of the rest of your life. All right, over and out.